Yeah, we're here. We're
Woohoo! Sorry about that, folks. All
live.
right. I was like, Kirsten, are we ready to go? And there was nothing, so I
I saw,
apologize
yeah,
for that.
I should have sent you a private message. Sorry. I was
You
trying to keep up with
can,
what's going on in the chat.
yeah. All right. Here we are. We are so excited to join with you to talk about talent acquisition and DEIB and all the things in and around that space. So, we are going to kick things off here. We're going to watch our time. We've got a lot of things to say, Kirsten, so y'all might have to just tell us to be quiet as opposed to having to fill the space. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves right now. Let me make sure that I can advance our slides. All right. So first, before we go through the agenda, I'm going to go ahead and just introduce myself, and then we'll flip it on over to Kirsten. So Rebecca Warren, I am a Director of Customer Success at Eightfold, have been at Eightfold a little over 2 years. Previous to that, practitioner in the talent acquisition HR space, going from sourcer all the way up through senior director at several large retail and restaurant organizations. Super excited to bring our content here. I met Kirsten through a networking group, and we have stayed connected ever since. Kirsten, I'm going to flip it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I am Kirsten Greggs, the founder and CEO of Trap Recruiter LLC. I'm a talent acquisition consulting company of one who bridges the gap between job seekers and employers who are looking to attract, select, and retain diverse workforces. And like Rebecca said, we served on a board together and have been connected ever since. And I'm excited to be here and ready to jump in.
All right, here we go. So our quick agenda, which we may change on the fly since we like to go down different routes as we chat. But overall, our goal is to share insights in how companies can improve their hiring process. Let's think about that diverse talent attraction and how we can also think about meeting DEI commitments that either we personally or our organization has made. So we're going to talk about some things that we're seeing and hearing in the industry right now, and then talk about ways to potentially reduce bias, eliminate some of those roadblocks, and enhance diversity, hiring, and employee retention. Can we do all that in like 42 minutes? Kirsten, I'm not sure. That might be too
We're
broad,
going to
but
do our best.
we're
We're
going to
going to do our
try.
best.
We're
Points
going to
will be
try.
made regardless.
That's right. We will have things to say. All right. So when Kirsten and I were talking about how do we start this session, one of the things that just really popped into my brain is this diversity initiatives being discouraged by Governor Abbott. And I think we both talked about it, kind of sucked the breath out of us when we first started hearing about it and talking about it. So let's just chat a little bit about the decision that he has made that DEI shouldn't be included in the hiring process. What do you think this is going to do for hiring as we think about bringing in a diverse group of people?
Well, first and foremost, I do think it's going to dissuade diverse talent from even applying to state agency jobs because this call, this active declaration of discouragement lets someone who is from an underrepresented group, it sends a message saying, we don't want you here. We use a lot of words to try and gloss over what we're really trying to say, and honestly, that's the bottom line. So his assertion that this is going to make things, we're going to hire on merit, like saying things like that do not make it better. And honestly, they're an excuse because there's enough data that says what the benefits are of a diverse workforce.
Right.
And like I said, to discourage any diversity initiatives at the state level, it just seems extremely exclusive. We'll say to use those words.
Right. because it almost makes it sound like we haven't been doing a great job hiring in the past, right? Like this is going to open the doors as opposed to narrow that playing field. I feel like it's causing folks that are threatened to feel more
Mm.
comfortable to only hire people that look like them or talk like them or think like them, which
Yes.
we got enough of that. We don't need any more of that, right?
But what you just said is extremely important. Like it's a vantage point I hadn't even thought about. You said like what we're saying, like the workforce that we have isn't working. So I would love to see what the numbers are, and I probably should have done this research. Are of the diverse workforce in the state agencies, like what their numbers look like. And I'm sure that some have, a larger percentage than others, depending on location and things like that. But that's just the nature of work in general. But, that's a message you're sending to your current staff, your current
Yeah.
employees that says, hey, y'all don't do a good job. So we're going to stop. We're going to stop
We're
this. And I
we're
didn't
gonna
even think of
narrow who we
Right.
bring
I
in.
didn't even think
Oh.
about it from that way. I thought about it from the
Yeah.
acquisition state. But what about the retention part of it? Like, are we going to see a mass exodus of
Right.
of non, of underrepresented groups from the state agencies in Texas? And
Yeah, not
I
feeling
think
valued.
so. I think
Yeah.
so.
Well, let's throw this open to the group. Would love to hear what you all think. We're going to throw up a poll here with a question, and it's really easy. Should diversity criteria be included in hiring decisions? And your options are yes or no. So that we're not giving you a lot of gray to play with, but we would love to have you take that poll and give us your feedback.
All right. It looks like we have 5 votes so far, and we're at 100% yes.
Okay, which is
19
yeah.
votes, 100% yes. I'm going to watch this go up a little bit more. I don't think we have what they call a quorum yet because we have about 75 folks here.
Yep.
Oh, it's heading up. We're almost at 50% now.
Yeah. Seems like we've got a lot of alignment
Yes. And,
here.
and I
Yeah,
think that's why people are here. I think the people that are
you're
here are
right.
committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So yeah, we're still at 100%. There are zero, none, no
All
votes.
right. So we probably don't have to spend a whole lot of time on this poll. It feels like we're aligned,
No.
that we're all thinking that diversity in ethnicity, in race, in thought all makes us better.
Yes,
Right. Which, as you said, is why we're here. All right.
it is.
So let's talk about, ooh, big words here. That can be somewhat scary, I think. Let's talk about what does it mean when we have DEIB in our organization? Thinking about hiring processes, thinking about how do we make DEI less of an issue or a project? How do we actually embed it in the organization? Looking at all of the different pieces of what that looks like. So, Kirsten, would love to hear your thoughts, especially on the front line of TA right now.
Yeah.
What should we be looking about and thinking about to get away from tokenism and more towards making it just a no-brainer?
Well, I think it comes when we are too focused on the first letter, when we're too focused on D, diversity, which is the number, the amount of things, and when we spend a lot of time using language about this person being monumental, being the first, being the only, being, something that like we don't give it enough time, or even hiring one DEI chief for the first time, like making it a big deal about the action and not about the strategy and your goals, your measurable goals and what you're really trying to attain for this. Are you just trying to check a box and say I did it,
Yeah.
or are you really trying to affect change, and are you really trying to elevate and advance your organizational culture? And if you're not doing that, then you are going to wind up in a situation where you have folks like me who have been in organizations, and and I've been the only one in the room for whatever reason, and I have to give some nuance there, because when I was in corporate America, I worked in defense and intel. contracting, and that's not a very diverse
Yep. Yep. Just
market or
small
industry,
slice. Yeah.
especially the higher up you get. um, and what would happen was, me being me being the recruiting leader for certain organizations. I was given the opportunity, like I would speak up and I would say things, but when I didn't have anyone else advocating for me, and when I didn't
Yeah.
have anyone else backing me up, like up front when it mattered, I would get those, I would make a statement. I would say, why we need to do things a certain way. Maybe we could change things here. Here's some things that'd be better. Here's the data. And I know recruiters get that all the time. We bring everything to the table, and then they're like, well, really? Are you sure?
Let me see more
And
people.
yes, oh,
That's a
Rebecca.
whole other thing. I'm sorry.
Right.
Went south.
Yes. Oh my goodness. But yes,
Yeah.
like getting that after the meeting, like I have been screamed at, I have been yelled at. I have been told, I've been told stop saying black. Like I asked
Oh,
a question,
what are you supposed to say?
I asked a question one time that was like, and I remember like there's certain instances where I'm like, is that because I'm black? Like, did you ask me that because I'm black?
Right.
And like that sent the meeting into an entirely different situation. Like it became a mess, but not to dwell on that. But there were times that there was, advocates in the room, but they didn't advocate for me out in front. They advocated for me
Oh,
via email after the fact. Or, I'd excuse myself and somebody like, oh, are you okay? That was really messed up what they did. Why didn't you say something then?
right,
Like
right,
do that.
right.
Be in the moment. So yeah, there it becomes a time where, and then you just feel like you said, like what's that? I think it was Richard Sherman. When he would do press conferences, and there's a lot of memes going around that says, "I'm just here so I won't get fined." Like that's what it
Mm.
turns into.
Right, right. So how do we, one of the things that I think is really important to make sure that it doesn't feel like you're the only voice in the room or that you're siloed or we're brought on board because of
Mhm.
something other than just your skill set. How do we like assimilate folks into the organization? Because even if we say, hey, we want more folks with broader perspectives, gender, race, all of those things, but how do we make sure that those folks actually feel comfortable to stay and participate? Because the last thing that you want is someone to come in, feel like I'm so excited to work here and I can make a difference, and then get siloed or marginalized or not heard, and then choose to leave rather than be able to feel like they're contributing to the organization. What are some of those things as we think about that assimilation
Yeah,
process?
this is why I know a lot of folks are adding B for belonging to a
Yeah.
lot of it, because it's one thing to be included in the meeting. It's one thing, to say, hey, we're going to have, you're going to have equal access to these same opportunities. It's another thing to say, hey, we have this many, but to make me feel like I belong, or to make um, your employees feel like they belong, is an entirely different thing.
Yeah.
To not try and talk over them or talk them out of their experiences, like making excuses. I think women can understand this from our perspective, or even folks that are differently able, neurodiverse. Like when they make a statement and someone explains it away, like I think we have a what's the right word? An appreciation for, or I think we have an understanding, we have empathy for that, especially if you share one of those demographics.
Yes. Yes.
However, if it comes, especially in race and maybe even religion and ethnicity based conversations, I think sometimes that we forget, and we try to, like I say, over talk or over explain away what people's actual experiences are, and they're valid, especially when you don't have anything else to compare it to. So
Yeah.
like you said, you talked about exit interviews, you touched on it just a little bit about things we were doing. And at the end of the day, if all of your people that are like if all of your employees were homogeneous and everybody's leaving is homogeneous, so they're going to have the same things. So when you do get that diverse candidate who's leaving, you're like, oh, I wonder why, and they tell you why, and then you say, well, that's a one-off. Well, of course it is, because they're the only
Right.
one,
Right.
So we have
And
to
yet,
make room for all of these experiences.
yeah, and to be heard and to be acknowledged, right? Like
Yeah.
you had said something when we were chatting the other day too about um, our our experiences are amplified through
Mm,
our lens, right? Like
yes.
my focus on women issues are because, well, I am one, right? So it is more visible to me as opposed to, I might bring something up and say, hey, why don't we have more women leaders in the organization? And we could have guys go, oh, I never really thought about it. Whereas
Right.
we look to see what that looks like. So as we think about our particular lens, I think those highlight those issues either in a positive or a negative way. And I think, you know, when we're in that situation, and I am not going to speak for a larger swath of people, but I think when we're in that situation, that's where we can, and of course, this is all idealistic to say, well, we can make a difference and we can speak up and we can do all that, but there has to be a broader sense of support for that, right? So how do we continue to think about inclusion, even if that's not our particular group? I think and maybe it's because on my strengths finders, my
Yes.
top 5 is, one of them is includer and another one is connectedness.
Yes.
So
I
I'm
love it.
always looking to see how do we pull people in. And I think we just all have to go in with that atmosphere of who do we see around the table, whether it's over Zoom or whether it's in a conference room. How do we make sure their voices are heard? How do we make sure that that they feel like they're part of the bigger picture? Which again, pie in the sky, right?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I think we have to get comfortable with having what I know a lot of orgs have dubbed as courageous conversations.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to continue to approach conflict resolution from a standpoint of that doesn't mean that we have to put 100% in one bucket. Like there is value in agreeing to disagree, but there's no the only thing that we should not compromise is our own humanity and our own respect. So just because like I don't want to agree with everyone 100%, like I can't grow that way.
Yep.
I can't
Agree.
grow by like what am I learning from that? What am I getting from that? But if we're coming at it from a mindset of like conflict's bad, when conflict actually helps you to grow, conflict actually helps you to expand your worldview, expand, it develops you. We we're not going to get there until we're ready to have that conversation, and we're not going to get there also, posturing ourselves on uneven footing when it comes to things like level. I know people don't like that term, leveling the playing field. It becomes, cliche, but that really is what it is. Like treating each person individually, how they want to be treated. It's that platinum rule that
Yep.
I admire. Not the golden rule. And sorry to our Christian friends, but the golden rule is, treat people the way you want to be treated. Why? No, treat people the way they want to be treated.
Yep, absolutely.
That's that. So
Absolutely. Yeah,
off my high
no.
horse.
I
I'm
like
sorry.
it. I like
Yes.
it. That's good. Well, so, there's a lot of things happening in the space right now where we have had um, roles and positions that have focused on all different aspects of DEIB plus. And we're starting to see that the focus may be changing a little bit, right? We've seen layoffs all across the world pretty much. And a lot of times the first folks to go are TA, HR, and folks that are in that DEIB space. And
Yeah.
so what should we be thinking about? What can we do if our organization doesn't necessarily have an overarching goal or a person to focus on these particular issues? What are your thoughts about
Oh, is this a poll?
DEIB?
Is this a poll
Uh,
question or no?
Not yet. No,
Okay.
I don't think
So
so.
can you focus on DEIB even if your organization doesn't? Yes. Yes. Yes, you can. Because I feel like we should have been doing that. I'm going to be transparent. I was thinking about DEIB, just being who I am. And I believe you were too, Rebecca. Like, you were
Hmm.
thinking about more ways to amplify women's voices. You were thinking about more ways to, do other things, do things that, spoke to what helps, what defines you, but the things that you value. So absolutely, you could be doing that from the beginning. You like
Yeah.
your ERGs and stuff can grow out of that. I mean, I believe that's how a lot of ERGs started, was like groups of people coming together for with common interests and things, and then wanting to
Yeah.
expand that, in organizations providing them with the resources and the buy-in, and to advance those things, and to make
Yeah.
them accessible and available to more people inside of the organization.
Yeah, so let's hold the thought on ERGs because we got a whole ball of wax that we want to get to in just a second. So you're exactly right. I think it's ways, like for instance, I was thinking about when I came into several of the organizations into a leadership role, and I
Mhm.
inherited a team that was not especially diverse. And they were very good at their jobs, right? But let's be honest, most of them were white women and a couple of men in several of the teams that I worked in. And
Mhm.
so where you in when we say, hey, we should be thinking about this, and we've talked about build the team that mirrors who you want to attract, but there's not
Mhm.
always an opportunity to do that. So like when we think about inheriting a group of folks that are not very diverse but yet still have great intentions and are really good at their job, how do we make that focus um, important as well without diminishing what they've done in the past, right? Before you jump into those roles.
Right. Well, yeah, no one's asking you, like we talked about the other day. No one's asking you to fire your staff and start over
Right. That would
from
be
scratch.
stupid.
So yeah, no one's asking you to do that. But just being aware, having a sense of awareness, and then setting goals. When it is time to expand your team, when it is time to partner with other groups, do that. From the talent acquisition standpoint, or from the recruiting standpoint, if you have a group of people in your organization that are dedicated recruiters, um, I get it. Even if you have a very diverse team, if you're always fishing in the same pond, you're going to get the same results. So
Yep.
there are things that even a homogeneous team can do. Reach out to do more outreach. Like, that's the best thing I can say. Do more outreach. Be intentional about targeting organizations and even third-party recruiters. I know some corporate recruiters don't like to talk to consultants. They think that they're like used car salesmen, and they're not, they're doing everything nefarious under the sun. But no, anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, reach out to them, like, diversify your strategies, even
Yeah.
diversify, the sources from which you are looking for talent, and some of the ways in which you are engaging that talent. I don't know what happened, like, why we stopped asking people for help. Um, you know, if, like, I know we're both Gen Xers, and like, there's a movie, Office Space, that
Oh my
is
gosh,
like,
my favorite. We could quote
yes,
that all day long.
it's a part of our life. It's
Yes.
really a part of our life.
Yes.
And like, what happened to those days when organizations called in consultants, for
Yes.
efficiency and things like that? Like, we could be doing that the same way, and
Except
with
we don't want the
DIB.
bobs.
We
No to
should
the
be
bobs.
the Bobs, yes. There's things like that we could be doing. We
Yeah.
saw our workforce a certain way. But yeah, like, there's additional things you can do besides, like I said, firing everybody on your team and then saying,
Right.
hey, I need three. We're not jelly beans. Like, you're not going to just.
That's right, because that goes back to tokenism, right? Like, hey,
Yeah.
we need to have this many of the color, we need to have this many that are LGBT, and we need to have this many that, I mean, that's
Oh.
crazy. So if in the spirit of good intentions, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we have to think about how could we change that narrative inside of our own minds and our own teams. There's some things in organizations that go top down, and there are some things that need to go ground up. And I think in this case, if you don't have someone who's leading a DEIB initiative, figure out who those advocates are. I know when I have joined organizations, I try to reach out to folks inside the organization that are different than me, smarter than me, right? That can, as you said, conflict isn't a bad thing or discussion isn't a bad thing. I want to connect with those folks that are different. That's something that you could do inside of a team that you inherit or inside of an organization that you join that maybe isn't as progressive or as diverse as you thought. How do you
Yeah.
reach out to those folks? And maybe that grows into an ERG, and maybe it grows into a discussion group, and maybe it goes through your people team, or maybe it really just starts with you. So
Yeah.
I think coming into it with the spirit of we can make this better, as opposed to we don't have anybody leading initiatives here, we're just going to not be able to focus on those things, right?
Yeah.
And something else that you said too, when we chatted before, is you were talking about, you don't have to start these things from scratch either. Like taking a look
Yes.
at what you've done inside your organization that has been successful for retention, for engagement. What are those things? And then maybe how do you expand them? How do you put a different spin or a different flavor on those to use best practices inside the organization to make that system better?
Yes, absolutely. And for anyone that may be wondering what we're talking about, I have brought up the fact that for whatever reason, when it comes to DEIB and whatever other additional letters you want to add on or take away, add and subtract, when it comes to these talks about diversifying your workforce or having strategies dedicated to DEIB, we often try to reinvent the wheel, and we're not taking into account that we have very successful, especially when it comes to hiring and retention. We have extremely successful programs that target certain demographics. We have internship programs. We have leadership development programs for our, what do they call those? High achieving or
Hypos? Yeah.
yes,
High potential. Yep.
high potential employees who are also early career. We again, coming from the industry that I came from, we have veteran focused
Yep.
organizations.
Resource groups. Yep.
We have hiring efforts that are targeted to people returning to the workforce. So we have the data and we have the framework, so to speak, for how to do DEIB in a way that's just as effective as those other things. But I think I don't know why there's such a pull, like why there's such a this idea that we have to start over,
Yeah.
and we don't. And I also don't think we give it enough time, you know,
So
because
true. It's not going to happen overnight.
no, because I'm sure that our first intern cohort wasn't that good, you know,
Right.
or we didn't, or like we love data, we love having beautiful PowerPoint presentations that show an uptick and that show all of these things. But we're looking at things like our conversion rates, which is retention. We're looking at things like our employee referral programs, like all of those things. We're looking at those, and those things took time. Like
Yes,
over
that's true.
time, they improved. If they didn't, then we don't do it anymore.
Right.
If they
Right.
got
Give
if
it
they got
time.
worse for, again, not non-external factors that we couldn't control, like we're not going to continue to do it that way. We're going to switch it and we're going to change, but we don't give that same time and effort to our DEI efforts that we do to other things.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about ERGs.
Yeah.
I think there are some interesting things that happen with ERGs and where we think they live. We're going to throw up a poll here. Would love your feedback. Can ERGs help build diversity? Yes, no. We've given you
Okay.
some
Oh, they already
choices.
voted.
Oh,
So
I think that
yeah,
I think that popped up during our last one. So
yeah.
perfect. We don't have to spend a lot of time waiting
So
for things to come in.
96.2% of the vote said yes.
Okay.
And here's some quotes. They create a sense of community and belonging. They should be one component of an organization's broader DEI strategy. They need clear guidelines, expectations to be effective. Yes, yes, they can. They can help, but they also can't. But we have to be very, very mindful that they don't become just echo chambers. Because
Yeah.
I promise you, I can talk to my friends all day long about what was going wrong at work, and I did. I had dedicated time before I entered the building.
Yeah. Well, you said that,
where I
as
could
we
like
were
air my
chatting.
grievances.
Well, and you said that, right? So I
Hmm.
think that's a really good point for an ERG, right? And let's be honest, we don't have white people ERGs. We shouldn't have white people ERGs, right?
No.
So as
Um.
you mentioned,
Yeah. No.
well, I think there's probably some flavors of that, right? I think like
Yeah.
a woman's ERG feels like we could all be better together in that particular group.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I know one of the things that you said that really made me think is you said, at one of the organizations that you belong to, you said,
Hmm.
I didn't join the Black ERG because I already talked to all those people and
Yes.
nothing else was happening in that group except we were all just talking about stuff. So I think
Hmm.
if you have a group that is an echo chamber or isn't effective, it almost feels like an ERG could harm that connection to the organization because it does become a place for folks to maybe insulate themselves as opposed to educate others. Maybe I'm just
Well,
talking out of the top of my head, but
no, 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 because I do think that, especially, and I can only speak, I can speak for, myself as a Black person during Black History Month. I need a safe space. And sometimes that does mean I have to be a part of, you know, even if it's an organized group, like if we're doing real programming, if it's not just vent
right,
sessions, and that could
right,
happen in any demographic.
true,
That happens when you pull together recruiters from other parts of the organizations of different teams, and you don't have any specific programming, you don't have any specific um, goals that you're trying to reach quarterly or yearly. You're not designing programming around, again, talent development and making yourself better. So I'm not going to dump on ERGs, but
sure,
unless they're I think for any ERG, unless you have those resources and those um, the programming behind it is kind of ineffective. And that was the reason why I joined
yeah,
the women's organization, because I was I was the talent acquisition leader, and I was able to reach across to other ERGs and do programming and things like that. But they were also sponsored by a woman who was the vice president of engineering, and
yeah.
she made sure that they had everything they needed and that they were seen as a value add to the organization. So that's where it mattered.
Yeah, because it can't just be, hey, we have these 7 ERGs to put on recruiting
Oh
stuff to
God.
get people in the door. And then we're like, oh, we
Yeah.
have it, but we don't do anything. Or we just do events once a year when
We
the
do Black
month
History Month
comes
program.
around. Right, 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 right. Yes. So, and I think also there is something to be said about folks who don't belong to that particular
Hmm.
demographic or title that is really important, right? Like thinking
Yes.
about an LGBT group, if you only have folks who are LGBT plus in the group, it's harder to get the message out, right? So
Yeah.
inviting those allies, inviting those folks that are connected and are passionate about whatever that ERG is, I think that also makes a difference in getting more folks connected to whatever the title of the group is, but then also broadening the message, right?
Yes.
Because if you only have the folks that should belong, or I don't even know what I'm saying, like the title of the group, if you
Yeah.
only have those folks, it's much more difficult to get that diversity of thought or to get the word out or to start spreading, some of the awareness that could come out of that. So
Yeah. Absolutely.
using it as a broader platform to build diversity in
Yes.
all different shapes. And now, and that also doesn't have to be just inside your organization, right? Are there ways that you can use your ERGs to volunteer in the community or to
Hmm.
partner with other groups or to do reading programs in schools or whatever? I mean, there's all
Yes.
different ways to connect. So I think also thinking more broadly instead of just a space for folks inside your organization to come, but also what are you doing then to take that outside of those doors?
Yes, absolutely. And I do think that more companies are becoming aware of the communities where they reside and trying
Yeah.
to be more community focused and create more partnerships. And I think we should continue to do that.
Yeah, and something that we didn't really talk about, but I know I am 100% remote.
Hmm.
I am standing here in my nice cabbie top and my sweats and slippers. So we're just gonna call spade
Love
a spade, right?
Cabby.
Yay,
Listen,
cabbie!
yes, I
That'll
love
be a whole nother
Cabby.
conversation. We can talk about cabbie, right? But there is something also about, I was in an office forever, right? Before the
Hmm.
pandemic, working from home felt like a great day when I could actually just take a day to get work done. And now I've been working remotely for the last coming up on 3 years. Um, and there's also that sense of connection that potentially an ERG might be around
Yeah,
who's in the office and who isn't, right? Or who's got a hybrid schedule and who doesn't. Because there are a lot of folks, I think, also that feel that love working remotely. I absolutely love it. But I will tell you, I do get benefits when I go in the office. There's just a different sense of camaraderie. So it may not be a bad thing to build an ERG around folks that are working remotely. And how do you get out in your own communities and still do stuff and meet people and all of that? So just something that came to mind as I was thinking about um, us both working remotely and
yeah. Oh
party
yeah,
on the bottom while work on the top.
I definitely I call it the business mullet. Yes.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
No, I definitely need that human connection.
Yeah.
That sense of building relationships, and I like it when it's organic, when it's not necessarily forced, which I think you do get. That benefit when you go in for your meeting, and there even this like when we're like we met online, as being
Yeah.
a part of a group, but when we came together for our retreat, like
Fabulous.
that was awesome. Like
Yes.
just seeing somebody and meeting someone and seeing them in person. Oh, you are real. Like you're not AI.
Yes, and you actually do like the back of your hair because all you could see is the front, right? I think sometimes I'm like, oh, I haven't looked at the back of my hair for a couple of days now. I only have to,
Oh
I only have
goodness.
to flat iron the front.
Hey, I'm
Oh,
not going to put
silliness.
myself on the summer jam screen, so to speak, and talk about whatever's going on behind my headphones.
It's all good. I actually love my headphones because they help, kind of, give me a different look. They pull my hair away from
Before
my
we
ear.
move forward, there's one comment that I think is
Okay.
great. I ran a far away remote ERG for those of us who lived out of state. It was such a great resource for figuring out health insurance options, managing expectations, et cetera. That's from Julia Sullivan. Thank you for that comment, Julia.
Yeah, I love
That's
it.
awesome. And folks in the comment, folks that are looking and watching the comments, I think that that's definitely a value add to an organization.
Yeah, love it. Well, so let's look at the whole thought of DEIB. Is it just a bunch of letters? Is it a DEIB council that meets once a quarter? Who owns it? Like, is it real? Is DEIB real? I'm just gonna throw that out there and see what y'all think.
Oh, is this a poll?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. Whew. Is this for them or for me?
This is for us. This is for you and I to hash through and throw things out, and feel free to throw stuff in the comments.
Listen,
Did
so
I just make this a little
transparent.
crazy?
So my answer is yes at this point. Yeah,
Okay.
but it doesn't have to be, and I think it depends on the person.
Okay.
I think for certain employees, there is nothing we could do that would make it anything more than a nuisance and a bunch of letters and why do we need this? Why are we doing this? We're not going to change their minds. Move on and leave them where they are, and the people that want to do the work keep it moving. Um, I think intentions matter. I think strategies matter. I don't. I think if you don't throw all the ingredients together, I love the alphabet soup. If the things are not actually coming together, if those aren't magnetic alphabets, and one flip of the table throws them all off, then yeah, it's just a bunch of letters. So what are you doing to make sure that it's not going to be just that?
Yeah. So it starts with you as a conversation? Is it starts with
Mm.
being visible in different parts of your organization, showing up differently. You know, there's a lot of platitudes, I think we could say, but I think it's being honest and sharing where we feel comfortable inside an organization. Maybe it's being vulnerable. Maybe
Mhm.
it is thinking about times when we didn't feel included or part of the conversation in the past to bring it forward. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm actually just looking at the notes. In the last session, one of the speakers said we need to tell stories to win hearts and minds. I think okay, yeah. But I think even just sharing those connections and that story will maybe make people think differently about it as opposed to tokenism or
Yeah.
quotas or
Yes.
reports. And
And
I
it
think
has
it's
to
very
come from the
easy
top
for it to
down.
be a report.
It really has to
Yeah.
come from the top down. And I'm not going to, dump on large organizations because I've worked for some of the largest
Yep.
organizations that you can think of, but I've seen a few um, where their leadership was really bought in and their leadership was active and their leadership was driving things and they weren't leaving it to this midsection of employees that kept things unbalanced, like they couldn't
Yeah.
reach up, they couldn't reach across, they couldn't reach down. It was just like, here's your box,
Yeah.
stay in your box and do your things. So unless it's coming from the top, unless it's truly trying to again be the point of transforming your culture, then it's just going to be like you said, DEIB, JC, ABCDEFG,
Right,
whatever.
right, right. Well, and I think, some of the things that we've seen where the best results for including diversity at all in the organization is when mistakes are made, right? If we
Hmm.
don't do it well, if we've said something that wasn't great, or if we've um, uh, you know, heard something that wasn't great. I think if we use that mistake or use that learning opportunity then to springboard to make us better, sometimes those mistakes are the best opportunities for growth as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I make mistakes all the time. Like I'm not perfect. I don't do everything right.
Oh, come
Um,
on. I think you're pretty perfect.
no, 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 no. So just really quickly, because I know we're coming up on time, and I think we still
Yep.
have a few more things to do. But when I was younger, and this is one of the most, this still sits in my mind before I say stuff. When I was in college, this was at work on campus in the library. I went to a conservative school in Virginia, but we were starting to do things. And my boss was a member of the LGBTQ community, and as far as I knew, like I thought I was like the most open and liberal person on the planet. Like, hey, I love everybody.
Hmm.
And I said something that like just joke like we were joking around and I said something um and he had to correct me right on the spot. And it wasn't anything like for me it was just something that kids said,
Hmm.
like I use the word for happy, to
Hmm.
describe. I use the G,
Hmm.
and I said that, but the way I said it was like when we used to say the R word, like
Oh, yep.
like it was like, oh, that's this. And he was like, I'm
Yes.
sorry. So he corrected me on the spot. And I'm sure there's been times that I have said something where I've had to be like, oh, wait, before you say that, is that actually the right word? Is that going to offend anyone? And it's not
Right.
that it takes me 15 minutes to get a sentence out. It's just that I have to be thinking about the language that I'm using and things like that too. So and when we do make a mistake, do what I like, apologize and say, you know
Yes.
what, I'm taking this out of my vocabulary, or I'm not going to, engage in this type of manner any further. Ooh,
Yeah. Love it. Well, as we're coming up short on time, we're going to skip that last poll. But I would love to
oh.
have us close it out here with some of the actions that you could potentially take. And as we were chatting about this, there's opportunities for every single group inside of an organization. We've put three up here. So the people team, or HR, talent acquisition, and employees. And of course, employees encompasses everyone. But as we think about some different things to to call out inside your organization. And I want to go right to the middle because Kirsten, I think you and I both agree that it can't just be a recruiter's job to pull the right folks in. Every recruiter is a diversity recruiter, and let's take that a step further. Every hiring manager is a diversity recruiter. Every referral program should have a diversity component to it. Like, it should just be embedded inside the organization. We should always be thinking about how do we widen that pool? How do we bring in the best and the brightest? But if we're only fishing in the same pond, we're never going to be able to get there. I think that's one of the things that are huge. It's a huge call out.
Yes, thank you.
And then just on the employee side, we talked about this a little bit, but having employees inside your organization reach out to other advocates for diversity, for folks who are different from them, for different thought partners, challenging folks inside your organization to connect with folks who are not like them, who don't think like them. I know I am a better person for talking to people who think differently than me and help fill in the gaps that I have. So thinking about partnering with other folks inside and outside your organization to make you better. And then, of course, on that people side, making sure that the HR and the people team is evaluating, or I shouldn't say evaluating, is recognizing those folks who embody those organizational values and really highlight those things. I know we're coming up on time. I think we're actually out of time. But any last thoughts, Kirsten, before we shut this party down?
No, I fully enjoyed the conversation. I tried to keep up with the comments, but there is some. So if you haven't, there's some good stuff in the comments that we couldn't keep our eyes on at the time. But definitely anyone who's watching, like, check back at the recording, look at the comment section, because there's some excellent things in there.
Well, we would absolutely love to have you reach out, find us on LinkedIn. Let's continue the conversation. I see a comment there that we will take away, and maybe we will answer that on one of our LinkedIn profiles, talking about accountability. So thank you all so much. Have yourself a fantastic day, and let's keep the conversation going.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone.